The meeting room was cold and empty when Lyra walked in. She looked around at the white walls and the long table in the center. This was where she would meet the humans for the first time. Her silver skin seemed to glow a little brighter under the lights. She felt nervous but tried not to show it. Lyra had spent months reading everything she could find about humans. The Galactic Council files said humans were dangerous. They acted on feelings instead of logic. They made choices based on emotions, which made them unpredictable. The files said humans could not control themselves like other advanced species could. They were too primitive to be trusted with important decisions. She heard footsteps outside the door. Lyra stood up straight and prepared herself. The door opened and 5 humans walked in. They all wore dark blue uniforms with small badges on their chests. They walked with confidence, not like the dangerous creatures the files described. The man in front was tall, with dark hair that had some gray in it. His eyes were brown and warm. When he saw Lyra, he smiled. The expression made his whole face change. Lyra had read that human smiles were tricks to hide their real thoughts. But this smile seemed real. It reached his eyes and made small lines appear at the corners. The man walked toward her and held out his hand. Lyra knew this was how humans greeted each other. She reached out her 3-fingered hand and placed it in his. His hand was warm, very warm. Her people were cold to the touch like reptiles, but his skin had heat that seemed to flow into her fingers. It felt strange, but not bad. Welcome to the station. My name is Daniel Carter. I am the head of the human team. We are glad to be here. His voice was deep and steady. Lyra noticed he spoke slowly, probably to make sure she understood. I am Lyra. I represent the Valerian people and the Galactic Council. We hope these talks will go well. She pulled her hand back and gestured to the chairs. They all sat down. Daniel sat across from her. He folded his hands on the table and waited. The other humans took out data pads and prepared to take notes. For the next hour, they talked about trade agreements. Daniel asked good questions. He wanted to know about Valerian technology and culture, but he also asked about things that seemed less important. He asked about Valerian art. He asked about their music. He asked about their families. Lyra found herself answering these questions even though they were not part of the official discussion. No other species had ever asked her these things before. Other diplomats only cared about resources and trade routes and military strength. But Daniel seemed genuinely interested in her people as more than just potential trade partners. The meeting ended after 3 hours. Everyone stood up to leave. Daniel walked over to Lyra before she could go. I know we have to follow the formal schedule, but I was hoping we could also have some informal conversations. Sometimes the best understanding comes from casual talks, not official meetings. Lyra was not sure what to say. This was not normal. Diplomats kept things professional. They did not have casual talks. I suppose that would be acceptable. Daniel smiled again. That same warm smile that made her skin patterns flicker. Great. How about tomorrow evening? I can show you the observation deck. The view of your home world from there is beautiful. Before she could think too much about it, Lyra agreed. Daniel nodded and left with his team. Lyra stood alone in the meeting room, wondering what she had just agreed to. That night, Lyra could not sleep. Her people did not need much sleep, only a few hours every few days. But tonight she felt restless. She kept thinking about Daniel. About his warm hand. About his smile. About the way he asked questions like he really cared about the answers. She pulled up the human files again on her data pad. She read about human emotions. The files said humans felt too much. They felt happiness and sadness and anger and fear. They felt love. The files said human love was just a biological trick. It was chemistry in their brains that made them want to stay together long enough to raise children. It was not real bonding like advanced species had. But as Lyra read the descriptions, she started to wonder. The files talked about love like it was a weakness, but they also said humans would die for the people they loved. They would give up everything. They would suffer for years if someone they loved was gone. That did not sound like just biology. That sounded like something much stronger. The next day passed slowly. Lyra and Daniel had another formal meeting. They discussed mining rights and technology exchanges. Daniel was professional and focused. But sometimes she caught him looking at her with that warm expression. And once when she made a joke, he laughed. The sound was rich and genuine. When evening came, Lyra went to the observation deck. Daniel was already there, standing by the huge window that showed the stars. He turned when he heard her come in. Come look. Your planet is just coming into view. Lyra walked over to stand beside him. Through the window, she could see Valar. It was a green and blue planet with 3 moons. She had seen it from space many times, but somehow it looked different now. Maybe it was because she was seeing it with Daniel. It is beautiful. I have been to many worlds, but few are as lovely as Valar. Daniel's voice was quiet, almost respectful. Thank you. What does your homeworld look like? Daniel touched something on the wall and the view changed. Now they were looking at a blue planet covered in white clouds. Most of the surface was water. That is Earth, about 70% water. We evolved from creatures that came out of the ocean millions of years ago. I think we still carry the ocean inside us somehow. What do you mean? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Lyra did not expect. My grandmother used to say that humans are like water. We change shape depending on where we are. We can be soft like rain or hard like ice. We flow around obstacles, but we are always moving, always feeling, never still. She said that was what made us human. Our emotions are like the tides. They pull us in different directions, but they also connect us to each other. Lyra turned to look at him. His face was thoughtful, looking at the planet below. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. She died 3 years ago. I still miss her. The way he said it made Lyra feel strange. There was pain in his voice, but also something else. Warmth. Love. Even though his grandmother was gone, the feeling remained. Among my people, when someone dies, we have a ceremony. We acknowledge their contribution to society. Then we move on. Life continues. Daniel looked at her with surprise. You do not mourn them. Mourn, feel sad, miss them. Remember them with both happiness and pain. Lyra thought about this. Her people did not have a word for mourn. They had words for loss and absence, but not for the complex feeling Daniel was describing. No, we do not do that. It would be inefficient to dwell on what cannot be changed. Daniel shook his head slowly. But remembering is not inefficient. When I think about my grandmother, I am keeping her alive in a way. Her lessons, her love, her wisdom, they are all still part of me. Sometimes I reach for my communication device to call her before I remember she is gone. It hurts, but that hurt reminds me that she mattered, that our connection was real. Lyra felt her skin patterns shift. This was getting too complicated. The human way of thinking about death and memory and love was so different from what she knew. Part of her wanted to reject it as primitive and illogical. But another part of her, a part she had never paid attention to before, wondered if maybe the humans understood something her people had forgotten. They stood together in silence, looking at the stars. After a while, Daniel spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? Lyra nodded, not trusting her voice. Do your people fall in love? Or is that only a human thing? The question caught her off guard. Lyra took a moment to think about how to answer. We have bonding contracts. When 2 Valerians decide to produce offspring, they sign an agreement. They commit to raising the child together for the required number of years. After that, they are free to bond with others if they choose. But do you love them? Your bonding partner? Lyra realized she did not know how to answer that question. She knew what the word love meant in human terms. But she had never felt anything like what Daniel was describing. I do not think we have what you call love. We have respect. We have partnership. We have shared goals. But this deep feeling you described, this connection that lasts beyond logic or reason, I do not think my people have that. Daniel turned to face her fully. That sounds lonely. The word hit Lyra hard. Lonely. She had never thought about it that way. But standing here with Daniel, feeling the warmth of another being who cared about things beyond duty and logic, she realized he was right. Her life was lonely. Her whole species was lonely. They had evolved away from messy emotions, but in doing so, they had lost something important. Maybe it is. I never thought about it before. They talked for another hour. Daniel told her about his family. He had a sister who was a doctor. He had friends he had known since childhood. He spoke about these people with such warmth that Lyra could almost feel the connections between them. When it was time to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. Thank you for sharing this time with me, Lyra. I hope we can talk again soon. I would like that. As Lyra walked back to her quarters, she felt different. Something had changed inside her. For the first time in her life, she questioned whether her people's way was truly the best way. For the first time, She wondered what it would be like to feel the way humans did. To love and be loved. To connect with another being so deeply that their absence could hurt you years later. For the first time, Lyra wondered if maybe human emotions were not a weakness at all. Maybe they were the most powerful force in the universe. The next few days were busy with meetings and negotiations. Lyra and Daniel worked together on trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. Every day, Lyra learned something new about humans. They were not what the Galactic Council files had described. They were thoughtful and careful. They asked good questions and listened to answers. They made jokes and laughed easily. But what surprised Lyra most was how much they cared about things that seemed unimportant. During one meeting, a young human woman named Kate spoke about protecting Earth's oceans. She did not talk about fish populations or trade resources. She talked about beauty, about how the ocean made her feel, about wanting her children to see whales and coral reefs. Lyra had never heard anyone talk about resources that way. Her people protected their environment because it was logical and necessary for survival. But Kate protected the ocean because she loved it. The difference seemed small, but somehow it felt huge. One morning, Lyra woke up early and decided to walk through the station's garden. It was a large space filled with plants from many different worlds. The air was warm and smelled like flowers and earth. She found it peaceful. As she walked down a path between tall trees, she saw someone sitting on a bench. It was Daniel. He was bent over something in his lap, moving his hand across it. Lyra got closer and saw he was drawing in a paper notebook with a pencil. She stopped, not wanting to disturb him. But Daniel looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Good morning, Lyra. You are up early. I could not sleep. I came here to think. Same here. Would you like to sit?" Lyra sat down beside him. She looked at his notebook. The drawing showed a flower she recognized. It was a meditation flower from her home world. The petals were drawn with careful detail. "That is a Valerian meditation flower. How do you know about it?" I asked one of the botanists here. She told me about how your people use it in ceremonies. She said the petals close during the day and open at night. I thought that was interesting, so I wanted to draw it, but why? We have holographic technology. You could capture an exact image in seconds. Daniel set down his pencil and looked at the drawing. My father taught me to draw when I was young. He was an artist. He said that when you draw something by hand, you have to really look at it. You have to understand its shape and how light falls on it. You have to connect with it. A hologram captures what something looks like, but drawing captures how it makes you feel. Lyra looked at the drawing again. It was not perfect. The lines were not as precise as a computer would make them, but there was something in it that felt alive. She could see that Daniel had spent time with this flower, had really looked at it and tried to understand it. May I ask you something personal? Of course. The Galactic Council files say that humans form pair bonds. They call them marriages. But the files say these bonds are temporary, that they are based on biology and usually end. Is this true? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He closed his notebook and set it aside. The files are both right and wrong. Yes, some marriages end. People change. Sometimes two people who loved each other grow in different directions. But that does not mean the bond was not real. And many marriages last a lifetime. The files miss the most important part. What part is that? Choice. Human love is not just a feeling that happens to you. It is a choice you make every single day. When you wake up in the morning and see the person next to you, you choose to love them. When they make you angry or frustrated, you choose to work through it. When life gets hard, you choose to stay. That is what makes it powerful. Not the feeling, but the choosing. Lyra felt her skin patterns shift with confusion. I do not understand. If it is a choice, then it is logical. But the files say human emotions are illogical. The feeling might start without logic. You meet someone and your heart beats faster. You want to be near them. That part is biology, like your files say. But what comes after is choice. Choosing to be kind when you are tired. Choosing to listen when you would rather talk. Choosing to put their happiness equal to your own. That is love. And it is the hardest and most logical thing humans do. Daniel reached into his shirt and pulled out a small device on a chain. He pressed a button and a hologram appeared. It showed a woman with brown hair and kind eyes. She was smiling. This is Grace. She was my wife. She died 5 years ago from a disease we could not cure. Lyra looked at the image. The woman looked happy. Her eyes were full of warmth. I am sorry for your loss, thank you. We had 32 years together. Every day of those years I chose her and she chose me. Some days were easy. We laughed and had adventures and enjoyed being together. Some days were hard. We argued. We hurt each other without meaning to. We struggled with money and work and all the normal problems of life. But we kept choosing each other. He looked at the hologram with such tenderness that Lyra felt something twist in her chest. It was not her own feeling. It was Daniel's feeling that she was sensing somehow. Grief and love mixed together. The files said human pair bonds end when one partner dies. Daniel shook his head. The marriage ended. The legal bond ended. But the love did not end. Grace is still with me every day. I drink coffee the way she taught me to make it. I read books she would have loved and think about what she would say about them. I try to be kind to people because she believed kindness mattered. She changed who I am. That does not go away just because she is gone. Lyra felt her patterns swirl with colors she had no name for. This concept was so foreign to everything she knew. Her people did not carry the dead with them. When someone died, they were remembered formally at a ceremony. Then life moved on. To dwell on the past was considered unhealthy, but Daniel was not dwelling. He was honoring. He was keeping Grace alive in the way he lived. And somehow that seemed more real than any ceremony. Among my people, we do not speak of the dead this way. I know. I have read about Valarian customs. Your people value efficiency and logic. The past is past and focusing on it does not change anything. I understand the reasoning, but life is more than efficiency. We are more than the sum of our logical decisions. The people we love shape us. They teach us and challenge us and help us grow. Forgetting them after they die means losing part of ourselves. Remembering them even when it hurts means honoring who they helped us become. Lyra was quiet for a long time. She watched Daniel put the hologram device back under his shirt, close to his heart. She thought about her own life. She had bonding partners before. She had produced offspring according to her civic duty, but she had never felt connected to anyone the way Daniel described. She had never chosen someone every day. She had never carried someone with her after they were gone. For the first time, Lyra wondered if her people had made a mistake. They had evolved to be logical and efficient. They had removed messy emotions from their society. They thought this made them advanced. But sitting here with Daniel, learning about human love, Lyra wondered if they had actually lost something precious. Daniel, I think the files are wrong about your species. He looked at her with interest. In what way? They describe human emotions as a weakness, as something that makes you primitive and unpredictable. But I am starting to think your emotions might be your greatest strength. You care about things beyond your own survival. You create art for its own sake. You love people so deeply that they stay with you even after death. That is not weakness. That is something my people have lost. Maybe something we never had. Daniel reached over and gently touched her hand. The contact sent warmth through her cool skin. Thank you for saying that. Most species in the galaxy think we are too emotional to be taken seriously. They see our feelings as flaws. It means a lot to hear someone recognize that emotions can be a strength. They sat together in the garden as the artificial sun grew brighter. Other people started walking through on their morning routines. But Lyra and Daniel stayed on the bench talking about love and loss and what it meant to be alive. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt something she could not explain. It was warm and frightening and wonderful all at once. She realized she was starting to care about Daniel as more than just a diplomatic contact. She looked forward to seeing him. She thought about him when they were apart. When he smiled at her, her skin patterns brightened. This must be what humans felt at the beginning of love. This pull toward another person. This desire to know them better. To spend time with them, to make them happy. It was illogical. It complicated her mission. It went against everything she had been taught, but it also felt more real than anything else in her carefully ordered life. As they walked back to the conference area together, Lyra made a decision. She would learn everything she could about human love, not from files and reports, but from Daniel himself. She would let herself feel these strange new emotions and see where they led. It was the most illogical decision she had ever made, and somehow it felt like the rightest thing she had ever done. Over the next week, Lyra spent every free moment learning about human culture. She did not just read the official files anymore. She found human books and movies and music. She studied their art and poetry. Everything she discovered challenged what she thought she knew. Humans created beautiful things not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They wrote poems about love and loss. They painted pictures of people and places that meant something to them. They composed music that made people cry or laugh or dance. Every piece of human art was an expression of emotion. It was a way of sharing feelings with others. Valerian art was different. Her people created things that served a purpose. Their buildings were efficient and functional. Their music conveyed information. Their visual art displayed data in attractive ways. But none of it was created just to express emotion. None of it was made simply because it moved someone's heart. The more Lyra learned, the more troubled she became. She had been sent here to evaluate whether humans were emotionally stable enough for full membership in the Galactic Council. The Council feared that human emotions would make them unpredictable and dangerous. They wanted Lyra to find proof that humans could not be trusted with important decisions. But everything Lyra had seen proved the opposite. Humans were not unstable. They felt deeply, yes, but those feelings made them better, not worse. They made humans care about things beyond themselves. They made humans creative and compassionate. They made humans willing to sacrifice for others. One evening, Lyra went to Daniel's quarters. She needed to talk to someone, and he was the only person who might understand. He opened the door looking surprised but pleased to see her. Lyra, come in. Is everything all right? She walked into his room. It was smaller than hers but felt warmer. He had decorated it with items from Earth. There was a painting of an ocean at sunset. A blanket with a colorful pattern hung over a chair. Photographs of people were arranged on a shelf. Family and friends, she guessed. I need to tell you something. Something I should not tell you. Daniel gestured to a chair and they both sat down. His expression was serious but calm. He waited for her to continue. The Galactic Council sent me here for more than just negotiations. They asked me to evaluate humanity's emotional stability. They are worried that human emotions make you unsuitable for leadership positions in the galaxy. My report will influence whether humans get full membership or remain as junior partners. Daniel nodded slowly. He did not look surprised. We suspected something like that. The Council has never hidden their view of human emotions. Lyra felt her patterns flicker with agitation. They wanted me to find evidence that you are unstable, that your emotions make you dangerous. But Daniel, everything I have learned suggests the opposite. Your emotions are not a weakness. They might be the most advanced trait any species has developed. What do you mean? Think about it. The Galactic Council species pride themselves on logic and efficiency. They removed emotions from their societies thousands of years ago. They think this makes them advanced. But what have they accomplished since then? They maintain what they have. They make small improvements. But they do not create anything truly new. They do not innovate. They have stagnated. She stood up and started pacing, a human habit she had picked up. But humans, in just 500 years since leaving Earth, have contributed more new ideas than any 3 council species combined. You create art that moves people. You develop technology because you are curious, not just because it is useful. You explore because you feel wonder. You help others because you feel compassion. Everything you do is driven by emotion, and it makes you stronger, not weaker. Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching her pace. So what will you tell the council? Lyra stopped and faced him. The truth. That the council's understanding of emotions is wrong. That what they call weakness is actually strength. That humans might be the most advanced species in the galaxy precisely because you have not evolved away from love. She sat down again, suddenly exhausted. But telling them this truth will end my career. Maybe worse. The council does not like to be told they are wrong, especially about something this fundamental. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes full of concern. Then do not do it. You do not owe humanity anything. Write a neutral report. Say we need more observation. Protect yourself. Lyra felt something warm in her chest at his words. He was trying to protect her, even though the truth would help his people. That was very human of him. No, I cannot do that. Not anymore. You have taught me something important, Daniel. You have taught me that truth matters more than safety, that caring about others is more important than protecting yourself. Those are human values, and I think they are the right values, but more than that I owe it to my own people. The Valarians eliminated emotions because they thought it would make them better. But we lost something precious. We lost the ability to create for joy. We lost the ability to connect deeply with others. We lost love. and I think that loss has made us less than we could be." Daniel stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the stars for a long moment before speaking. "My wife Grace used to say that love was an act of courage. It takes courage to make yourself vulnerable. It takes courage to care about someone else as much as you care about yourself. It takes courage to choose connection even when isolation would be safer." He turned back to face her. "What you are doing right now, Lyra, that is love. You are choosing to risk everything to tell the truth. Not for your own benefit, but because you care about what is right. That is more human than you realize." Lyra felt her patterns glow brighter. She stood and walked over to him. "Daniel, I need to tell you something else. These past weeks, spending time with you, learning from you, I have felt things I have never felt before. Among my people, we do not have this. We do not form deep connections. We do not choose to care about specific individuals. But I think I am starting to understand what human love is, and I think I am starting to feel it. For you," the words came out in a rush. Lyra had never been so scared in her life. She was admitting something that went against everything she had been taught. She was making herself completely vulnerable. Daniel's expression softened. He reached out and took her hands carefully. "Lyra, what you are feeling is real, but you need to understand what it means. Love is not easy. It requires work. It requires patience and compromise. It means letting another person see all of you, the strong parts and the weak parts. It means trusting them with your heart even though they could break it. You are warning me." "Yes, because I care about you, and I do not want you to make this choice lightly. If you embrace human emotions, if you let yourself love, it will change everything. Your relationship with your people, your career, your entire way of seeing the world. Nothing will be the same." Lyra's patterns blazed bright blue, the Valerian signal for complete certainty. "Then it will be worth it. Because what I have now, this safe, emotionless existence, it is not worth keeping if it means never knowing what you humans understand. The capacity to love and be loved in return." Daniel pulled her into an embrace. Lyra had never been hugged before. Her people did not touch like this. But as Daniel's arms wrapped around her, she understood why humans did it. The warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart, the way his arms provided both comfort and strength. It all made her feel safe and connected and wanted. She relaxed into the embrace and felt something shift inside her. This was what love felt like. This sense of belonging. This feeling of being seen and accepted completely. This knowledge that you were not alone anymore. Then we will figure it out together. That is what love means. You do not face the hard things alone anymore. Daniel's voice was soft near her ear. Lyra closed her eyes and let herself feel the full weight of what was happening. She was falling in love with a human. She was choosing connection over safety. She was becoming something her people had no word for. They stood like that for a long time. Finally, Lyra pulled back enough to look at his face. "I am scared." "Good. That means it matters. If it did not scare you, it would not be real. How do you do this? How do you live with this much feeling? Does it not overwhelm you?" Daniel smiled. "Sometimes it does. When Grace died, I thought the grief would destroy me. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. But I survived it. And you know what I learned? That the pain was proof of how much I loved her. If I had not loved her so much, losing her would not have hurt so much. The depth of pain matched the depth of love. That seems like a terrible trade. It would be if that was all there was. But it is not. Yes, loving someone means you might lose them someday. Yes, it means you can be hurt. But it also means you get to experience joy and connection and meaning. It means your life has purpose beyond just existing. I would rather have 32 years of love and pain than an eternity of safety and emptiness." Lyra thought about her life before meeting Daniel. It had been safe, ordered, predictable. But had it been meaningful? Had she ever felt truly alive? The answer was no. She had existed, but she had not lived. I understand now why people think they evolved beyond emotions. But really they just became afraid. It is easier to feel nothing than to risk feeling everything. It is safer to stay isolated than to connect deeply with others. But easier and safer do not mean better. Exactly. And that is what your report should say. That the Galactic Council has mistaken fear for wisdom. That they have chosen safety over growth. That true advancement is not about eliminating emotions, but about learning to feel deeply and act wisely because of those feelings, not despite them. Lyra nodded. She knew what she had to do now. It would not be easy. The council would be angry. Her own people might reject her. But it was the truth, and the truth mattered more than her comfort. Besides, she would not be alone anymore. She had Daniel, and that made everything possible. The days after Lyra's confession felt different. Everything looked brighter somehow. The station corridors seemed warmer. The meetings were still long and technical, but now Lyra had something to look forward to afterward. Time with Daniel. They fell into a routine. After work, they would meet in the garden or the observation deck. Sometimes they talked about serious things like politics and philosophy. Other times they just enjoyed being together in comfortable silence. Daniel taught her about human customs. She taught him about Valerian culture. One evening, Daniel invited her to his quarters to watch something he called a movie. Lyra had never seen one before. Her people had educational videos and news broadcasts, but nothing made purely for entertainment. The movie told a story about two people from different backgrounds who fell in love. There were obstacles and challenges. Their families did not approve. Their cultures clashed. But the two people chose each other anyway. They fought for their relationship. In the end, they found a way to be together. As the movie played, Lyra felt her patterns shift through many colors. She felt happy when the characters were happy. She felt worried when they faced problems. When they finally came together at the end, she felt a surge of joy that made her whole body glow. When it ended, Lyra sat quietly for a moment. Daniel watched her with a small smile. What did you think? It was beautiful, but also frightening. Do humans really risk everything for love like that? Sometimes. Not always as dramatically as in the movies. But yes, we take risks for the people we love. We make ourselves vulnerable. We choose to care even when it might hurt us. Lyra turned to look at him. That seems terrifying, it is. But the alternative is worse. A life without love, without deep connection, without someone to share everything with, that is not really living. That is just existing. Lyra's patterns pulsed rapidly. She felt nervous and hopeful at the same time. Daniel, I need to tell you something. These past weeks with you have changed me. I have learned so much, not just about humans, but about myself. I am beginning to understand what love means. And I think what I feel for you is love. She paused, gathering her courage. Among my people, we do not have this kind of bond. We have contracts and partnerships. We have duty and obligation. But we do not have this choice to care deeply about another specific person. We do not have this vulnerability and trust and hope all mixed together. I never knew I was missing it until I met you. And now I cannot imagine going back to how things were before. Daniel reached over and took her hand. His touch was gentle and warm. Lyra, what you are describing is real. Those feelings are valid. But I need you to understand what you are choosing. Love is not just the happy parts. It is also compromise and patience. It is working through disagreements. It is supporting each other on bad days. It is choosing someone every single day, even when it is hard. I know. You have taught me that. And I am choosing it anyway. I am choosing you. Daniel's expression shifted to something tender and serious. Then you should also know that I am choosing you too. When Grace died, I thought I would never feel this way again. I thought that part of my life was over. But you have shown me that the heart has room for more than one great love. You have reminded me what it feels like to care about someone so much that their happiness matters as much as my own. He stood up and gently pulled her to her feet. Then he wrapped his arms around her in a human embrace. Lyra leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. This simple act of holding and being held felt more meaningful than any formal bonding ceremony her people practiced. This is what love feels like. This safety, this belonging, this knowledge that someone sees all of you and chooses you anyway. Daniel's voice was soft. Yes. And it also feels like fear. Fear that something might happen to the other person. Fear that you might fail them somehow. But that fear is just proof of how much they matter. They stood like that for a long time. Eventually, they sat back down on the couch, but closer this time. Lyra leaned against Daniel's shoulder. It felt natural, like they had done this 1,000 times before. What will happen when the negotiations end? When we both have to go back to our home worlds? Daniel was quiet for a moment. I do not know. Long-distance relationships are hard, even for humans who are used to dealing with emotions. For someone just learning about love, it will be even harder. But humans have a saying, love finds a way. If we both want this to work, we will figure it out. Lyra thought about her upcoming report to the council. Once she told them the truth about human emotions, there would be consequences. The council would not be happy. Her own people would be shocked that she had abandoned logic for feelings. She might lose everything she had worked for, but she would have Daniel. And maybe that was enough. Maybe having one person who truly understood you and chose you was worth more than 1,000 professional achievements. I am going to submit my report next week. It will say that human emotions are not a weakness but a strength. It will challenge everything the Galactic Council believes about what makes a species advanced. They will be angry. You do not have to do this. You could write something neutral. Something that would not put your career at risk. No. I have to tell the truth. Not just for humanity, but for my own people. The Valarians need to know what they have lost. They need to understand that eliminating emotions did not make them better. It made them less. She sat up and looked at Daniel directly. You have taught me that truth matters. That caring about others is more important than protecting yourself. That love requires courage. I am going to be brave, like a human. Daniel smiled and touched her face gently. You already are brave. Braver than most humans I know. You are willing to challenge your entire society for what you believe is right. That takes incredible courage. I am only brave because of you. You have shown me that there is something worth fighting for. Love is worth the risk. They spent the rest of the evening talking about their future. They made no firm plans. The situation was too complicated for that. But they made promises. They promised to stay in contact. They promised to fight for their relationship. They promised to choose each other no matter how hard it got. When it was late, Lyra stood to leave. Daniel walked her to the door. Before she left, he pulled her close and kissed her forehead. It was a gentle, tender gesture. Lyra had read about human kisses, but experiencing one was completely different. It made her feel cherished and safe. Thank you for tonight. For teaching me what this feels like. Thank you for being willing to learn. Thank you for choosing to feel, even though it is scary. That is the bravest thing anyone can do. As Lyra walked back to her quarters, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Yes, the coming days would be difficult. Yes, there would be consequences for her honesty. But she was not alone anymore. She had Daniel. She had love. And that made everything possible. The next morning, Lyra began writing her report. She did not hold back. She wrote about everything she had learned. She explained that human emotions were not primitive impulses, but sophisticated responses that enhanced decision-making. She described how human empathy led to better diplomacy, how human creativity led to innovation, how human love led to societies built on genuine care rather than just mutual benefit. She wrote about her own experience, how learning about human emotions had changed her, how falling in love with Daniel had taught her what her people had lost when they eliminated feelings from their culture. She admitted her bias openly. Yes, she had fallen in love with a human, and that made her opinion more valuable, not less. She had experienced both ways of living. She could compare them honestly. The report took 3 days to complete. When she finished, she read through it one last time. Every word was true. Every conclusion was supported by evidence. But she knew the council would hate it. It challenged their fundamental beliefs about civilization and progress. She submitted the report and waited. The response came quickly. The council requested her presence at a formal hearing. They wanted her to present her findings in person and answer questions. The tone of the message made it clear they were not happy. Daniel found her in the garden that evening. She was sitting on their bench, looking at the meditation flower he had drawn weeks ago. When he sat beside her, she leaned into him automatically. It had become natural to seek his comfort. They called a hearing. In 3 days, I have to present my findings to the full council. Are you ready? I do not know. I am scared. But I am also certain I am right. That is a strange combination of feelings. Daniel took her hand. That is called conviction. It means you believe in something strongly enough to defend it, even when you are afraid. It is a very human trait, and a very valuable one. Will you be there? At the hearing? If they allow it, yes. I want to support you. Whatever happens, we face it together. Remember? Lyra nodded. Together. That word meant so much more now than it did a month ago. Together meant not being alone. It meant having someone on your side no matter what. It meant love. They sat in the garden until the artificial sun set. They did not talk much. They just held hands and watched the stars appear overhead. Tomorrow they would prepare for the hearing. Tomorrow they would plan what to say and how to respond to criticism. But tonight they just needed to be together. Because that was what love was, showing up, being present, choosing each other in the quiet moments as well as the dramatic ones. It was simple and profound and terrifying and beautiful all at once, and Lyra would not trade it for anything. Not for safety, not for approval, not for an entire galaxy of emotionless efficiency. She had found something real, something worth fighting for. She had found love. The hearing room was massive. 17 species sent representatives to sit in judgment. The chamber was circular with seats rising and tiers all around. In the center was a single platform where Lyra would stand. Above everything hung the symbol of the Galactic Council, a circle of stars representing unity and progress. Lyra stood at the entrance, trying to calm her racing heart. Her skin patterns flickered rapidly, showing her nervousness. Daniel stood beside her. He could not go in with her, but he squeezed her hand before she had to enter. Remember, you are not alone. I will be in the viewing area. And no matter what happens, I am proud of you. You are doing something brave and important. Lyra nodded. She wanted to say so much, but there was no time. She just touched his face gently, a gesture she had learned from him, and walked into the chamber. The room fell silent as she entered. All eyes turned to watch her walk to the center platform. She could see the council members in their seats. Most looked stern and disapproving. A few looked curious. She spotted the Draxian representative, who had always been vocal about his distrust of human emotions. Lyra reached the platform and stood straight, her patterns calmed to a steady blue glow. She would not show fear even though she felt it. A Vexorian elder spoke first. Her voice was cold and formal. Ambassador Lyra, we have read your report. It makes claims that challenge the fundamental principles of the Galactic Council. Before we hear your presentation, we must address a serious concern. There are rumors that you have formed an inappropriate attachment to the human delegation leader. Is this true? The chamber erupted in whispers and murmurs. This was the moment Lyra had dreaded. She could deny it. She could claim the rumors were false. That would be the safe choice, but it would also be a lie. And everything she was about to argue depended on honesty. Lyra took a deep breath and let her patterns glow brighter. Yes, the rumors are true. I have fallen in love with Daniel Carter, and that supposed compromise is precisely why my findings are more valuable, not less. The chamber exploded in noise. Council members shouted questions and objections. The Vexorian elder had to call for order several times before the room quieted down. Explain yourself, Ambassador. How can bias possibly increase the value of your analysis? Lyra stood firm. She had practiced this speech in her head 100 times. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council has operated on the assumption that evolution means the elimination of emotion. We pride ourselves on logic and reason. We make decisions without the interference of feelings. We have built a civilization on this foundation, and we call it advanced. She activated the holographic display and data appeared floating in the air. But look at the evidence objectively. In the 3,000 years since forming this council, how many new artistic movements have we created? How many revolutionary scientific theories have we proposed? How many times have we shown true innovation instead of just small improvements? She paused to let them absorb the data. The answer is troubling. We have stagnated. We maintain what we have. We make things slightly better. But we create nothing truly new. We have mistaken efficiency for progress. We have confused safety with advancement. The display changed to show human achievements. Now compare this to humanity. In just 500 years since leaving their planet, humans have contributed more new ideas and innovations than any 3 council species combined. They create art that moves people across species boundaries. They develop technology driven by curiosity, not just need. They explore because they feel wonder, and all of this is powered by emotion. A Draxian counselor stood up, his voice angry. You speak of emotions as if they are virtues. But emotions lead to conflict. They lead to jealousy and violence and war. We eliminated such attachments for good reason. They made us weak and unpredictable. Lyra faced him directly. No, we eliminated emotions because they were difficult. Because they required vulnerability. Because they demanded that we value something beyond our own survival and efficiency. But in doing so, we eliminated the very thing that gives life meaning. She turned to address the full council. I have spent weeks studying human culture. And yes, I have fallen in love with a human. This experience has taught me what no amount of clinical observation could reveal. Love is not a weakness. It is the courage to care about something beyond yourself. It is the strength to be vulnerable. It is the wisdom to know that connection matters more than perfection. The Vexorian elder spoke again. So your recommendation is based entirely on your personal feelings? On this attachment you have formed? No. My recommendation is based on evidence and observation. The data supports everything I am saying. But yes, my personal experience has helped me understand what the data means. I have lived both ways. I know what it feels like to exist without emotions, following only logic and duty. And I now know what it feels like to love, to care deeply about another being, to choose vulnerability over safety. She let her patterns glow with complete honesty, and I can tell you with certainty that the second way is better. It is richer and more meaningful and more alive. The Valerians and every other council species have not evolved beyond emotions. We have simply become afraid of them. We chose safety over growth. We chose isolation over connection. And we have been diminished by that choice. A younger council member, a Taraxian, spoke up. His voice was thoughtful rather than angry. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Lyra? That we all suddenly start feeling emotions we have not experienced in thousands of years? That is not possible. I am proposing that we stop treating human emotions as a flaw to be tolerated. I am proposing we grant humanity full membership, not as a concession but as an opportunity. Let them teach us what we have lost. Let them remind us that civilization should not mean the absence of feeling, but the wisdom to feel deeply and act wisely because of those feelings. She looked around at all the council members, and if the council rejects this recommendation, if you choose to keep humanity at a distance because their emotions make you uncomfortable, then I submit that it is not humanity that lacks civilization. It is us. We have built a galaxy-wide society based on efficiency and logic. But we have forgotten what all that efficiency is supposed to serve. We have forgotten that the point of life is not just to survive or maintain order. The point is to live fully, to connect deeply, to create meaning. The silence that followed was complete. Lyra had said everything she came to say. She had told the truth as clearly as she could. Now there was nothing to do but wait for their judgment. She looked up at the viewing gallery and found Daniel. Even from this distance she could see his expression. Pride and love and support all mixed together. No matter what the council decided, she had him. And that made everything worthwhile. The council deliberated for 3 hours. Lyra waited in a small side room. Daniel was allowed to join her there. They sat together on a bench holding hands, not talking much. There was nothing left to say. They had done everything they could. Finally, a messenger came to get them. The council had reached a decision. They walked back to the chamber together. This time, Daniel was allowed to stand beside her as the verdict was announced. The Vexorian elder stood to deliver the decision. The Galactic Council has voted on the question of human membership. By a narrow margin, we have decided to grant humanity full membership status. Furthermore, we are commissioning a galaxy-wide study on the role of emotions in advanced civilization. Ambassador Lyra will lead this study. Lyra felt her patterns explode in colors of joy and relief.
They had won.
Not just for humanity, but for everyone. The conversation about emotions would continue. The galaxy would have a chance to reconsider what advancement really meant. Daniel squeezed her hand. She looked at him and saw tears in his eyes. Human tears, the physical expression of overwhelming emotion. She understood them now. They were not a sign of weakness, but of deep feeling. And that was beautiful. After the ceremony ended, they walked to the observation deck. Their special place. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibility. You did it. You changed the galaxy. Daniel's voice was full of wonder. We did it. Together. You taught me what love is. You gave me the courage to tell the truth. I could not have done this without you. They stood close together, looking at Earth and Valar, both visible in the distance. 2 worlds. 2 species. One connection that bridged all the differences. What happens now? Lyra asked the question they had both been avoiding. Now we figure it out. 1 day at a time. That is all anyone can do. The galaxy is changing. Your people will start asking questions about emotions. My people will help teach them. It will be slow and difficult and amazing, and we will do it together. Together. That word held so much promise now. It meant partnership and support. It meant facing challenges as a team. It meant love. Lyra turned to face Daniel fully. She used the words she had learned, the human phrase that captured everything she felt. I love you. Daniel Carter, his smile was radiant. I love you too, Lyra, and in that moment with those simple words, they proved something important. Love was not a myth. It was not a primitive biological trick. It was not a weakness that advanced species should eliminate.